Ike is a magician in the demon army, renowned for his extreme strength and skills, which have earned him the rank of commander. In this war-torn world, he leads his troops on the battlefield, strategizing how to conquer the impregnable fort of Arson. On the battlefield, humans and monsters slaughter each other by the thousands, each race striving for supremacy. Ike stands on a cliff, witnessing the massacre below. After a prolonged struggle, his forces manage to breach the main gate of the castle and enter, but the humans do not retreat. They fight valiantly, sacrificing their lives to defend their stronghold. The human Lord Commander watches from his window, safely inside the castle, as the battle rages on. Ike decides to pay him a visit, unwilling to see more lives lost. The commander turns and immediately recognizes Ike, whose tales are well known. Ike confirms his identity as the leader of the 7th Legion of the Demon King Army, known as the Immortal Brigade. He presents the commander with 3 options for the future: surrender peacefully and become a prisoner of war, end his own life to preserve his honor, or, if he has no honor, escape through the window. The commander smirks and rejects all options given by someone he considers a traitor to his own race. He charges at Ike with his sword, but Ike easily knocks him out with a simple swipe of his wand. Suddenly, Ike's personal assistant, a pig, appears and asks what should be done with the prisoners of war. Ike instructs him to heal the commander and anyone who surrenders without a fight, shocking both the pig and a mysteriously attractive woman who observes him through a crystal ball. She seems impressed by his ability to capture such an important castle with a single brigade. Afterward, Ike places a magical barrier around the entire area to prevent further entry onto the battlefield. He looks out to see countless human casualties and demons treating the wounded. He feels sorrow for the atrocities unfolding before him and has always despised the brutality of war. However, he has no choice but to continue fighting, a role he has become accustomed to despite not being a demon himself, but a human wearing a demon mask. It is revealed that Ike was abandoned at birth but was taken in by a demon magician named Ram on a whim. Ram was an exceptional magician and an outstanding teacher who always dreamed of a time when humans and demons could coexist peacefully. He taught Ike everything he knew about magic. On his deathbed, Ram called Ike to his chamber and urged him to always wear the mask and robe, warning that if the Demon King discovered he was not a demon, he would be tortured and killed immediately. Ike sits down to relax, having cast a magic field around the room to prevent anyone from entering without his permission. Suddenly, he notices a trembling maid hiding under the table. She starts apologizing and crying, claiming she didn't see anything. In her panic, she hits her head on the table and gets knocked out. Ike ponders how to handle this situation, but decides to think about it later as his assistant, Pig, calls him outside. As they walk through the streets, witnessing the devastation caused by the war, Piggy asks Ike why he spares so many humans. Ike curtly replies that the current Demon King only cares about the results, not the methods. Piggy counters that many demons think Ike is too lenient on humans and suggests that it would be better to kill all the residents and set the streets on fire. Ike rejects this idea, explaining that they need humans to pay taxes because war is expensive. Additionally, Arsenal is a trade city, so humans are necessary to maintain its operations. Piggy struggles to understand this logic when Ike suddenly stops as a group of humans approaches him. Piggy immediately warns them to leave, but Ike tells them to speak. One of the residents nervously asks how much more tax they will have to pay the demon army. To their surprise, Ike assures them that the taxes will remain the same as before, which makes them happy. However, he warns them that any opposition to the army will be met with punishment. As Ike finishes speaking, he suddenly disappears in a bright light, leaving Piggy astonished. Ike himself is shocked as he finds himself in a dark dungeon, immediately under attack by a giant monster. Dodging the initial blow, he runs while shouting at the mysterious woman, chastising her for summoning him in such a manner. The demon continues its relentless assault, forcing Ike to pull a wand from his robe. He unleashes a special magic attack, dispatching the demon, though the details of the attack remain unseen due to poor lighting. Immediately, the woman appears beside him, remarking that Ike was just a child hiding behind Ram the last time she saw him. She comments on the strength of the golem, indicating Ike's significant growth in power. The woman, named Sephiroth, is Ike's superior, and the only demon aware of his true identity. He reprimands her for summoning him so abruptly, but she responds that it's more entertaining this way. When he asks if he's there to report on the war efforts, she dismisses it, noting that she witnessed his flawless execution firsthand. Sephiroth reveals that the Demon King herself wishes to meet Ike. This surprises him, as a mere brigade leader usually wouldn't warrant such attention. When he questions the reason, Sephiroth speculates that the Demon King might be interested in how he managed to capture Arsenal in just a week. She tells him to prepare, then teleports them to the Demon King's castle. Seeing the castle for the first time, Ike is taken aback by its grandeur. As they approach the main gate, guarded by numerous demons. He asks Sephiroth if he will be searched before entering. She affirms that everyone is checked, as the Demon King is the most important person in their world. This makes Ike nervous, fearing that his true identity might be revealed. However, Sephiroth reassures him. Surprisingly, the guards, overwhelmed by Ike's magical aura, step aside, acknowledging him as the grandson of the great magician Ram. They enter the castle's hallway, with Sephiroth flying beside Ike. He reflects on his own flying skills, acknowledging that he isn't as proficient as her. They reach the entrance to the courtroom, where Sephiroth instructs him to wait while she announces his arrival. Left alone, Ike contemplates the current Demon King, Darrow, known for his competence and ruthlessness. He recalls how Darrow turned the tide of the war in a single battle, being merciless to the incompetent but rewarding talent and competence regardless of rank or background. Sephiroth soon returns, calling Ike inside. Entering the courtroom with his head bowed, Ike is stunned to see a girl seated on the throne. Assuming she must be the Demon King's daughter, he quickly realizes his mistake and bows deeply. The girl, who is indeed the Demon King, praises Ike for capturing Arsenal in just a week. Ike humbly responds, attributing his success to following Sephiroth's orders. Darrow comments on how Ike's humility is reminiscent of a human's, making him realize he needs to adjust his demeanor. Thankfully, Sephiroth intervenes, explaining that Ike is the grandson of Ram, which seems to appease the Demon King. Dai smiles and comments that she can see where Ike gets his battle tactics from, but continues to ask why he is so insistent on ensuring that humans do not die unnecessarily. Ike immediately worries, thinking that perhaps he should have executed a few of them to avoid suspicion, but realizes he cannot bring himself to kill innocent people. He decides to speak up and explains that while humans are terrified of demons, terror does not foster loyalty or efficiency. He asserts that humans will follow a ruler who is competent and can improve their situation, regardless of who that ruler is. The Demon King seems impressed by his perspective and instantly teleports in front of him, remarking that he truly is different from other demons. She expresses a desire to see the real face behind his mask before leaving the court. Overwhelmed with relief, Ike falls to the ground, breathing deeply, and tells Seph that such frightening experiences are not good for his heart. Seph encourages him, revealing that Dai has decided to reward him by making him the ruler of the city of Arsenal. Ike is then teleported back to the castle in Arsenal, where he finds the maid sleeping on his chair. Startled, she jumps up and begins apologizing. Ike reassures her that he will not harm her and asks for her name. She identifies herself as 13, explaining that all slaves are given numbers instead of names. She mentions that her real name was Sadie before she became a slave, and Ike decides to call her Sadie. He tells her that since she has already seen his true identity, he cannot let her go free. She leaps onto him, crying, but he calms her down and assures her that he will not kill her. Instead, he tells her that she will be his personal maid from now on, and she immediately agrees. Later that day, Ike surveys the damage done to the city and realizes that the defenses need to be rebuilt quickly, as the city will fall if the humans decide to attack. He asks Piggy how long it will take to rebuild the defense, and Piggy estimates 6 months if they use all the human labor. Ike, knowing this is too long, tells Piggy they have only 1 month to complete the work. Piggy claims this is impossible, but Ike lays out a plan that involves both humans and demons working together. Piggy, astonished, watches as Ike organizes shifts to ensure work is done around the clock. The workers are even given rewards for their efforts, which motivates them to work harder. Piggy realizes that Ike is a true genius, bringing tears of joy to his eyes. He starts to think about how everyone would benefit if Ike became the next Demon King. Next, we witness another army of the Demon King's army launching an assault on Rosaria. They are met with retaliation from human mages, but despite their efforts, the demons manage to break through the city walls. Meanwhile, we see that the guard informs the Demon Lord that the war with Rosaria is going well for the moment, but it seems they're forming an alliance with their neighbors to turn the tide of the war. The Demon Lord states that humans come together in the face of danger, and that she will let Ike handle the matters. The scene then changes to Sadie as she offers tea to Ike and asks if he is tired. Ike firmly replies that he is fine. We then see a high-ranking noble summon the White Rose Knights commander, Alistair, and order her to retake Avalians, as they can't let the other nations continue to take advantage of them. Alistair dons her armor and moves out. The scene shifts to the streets of Rosaria, where a conman sets up a simple game. He challenges passersby to guess where the ball ends up under the cups, promising to double their money if they win. Among the crowd, Sadie is there, and she picks one of the cups. The conman asks how much she will bet, but Sadie says she doesn't have any money. The conman gets angry and asks her to leave, but after seeing her appearance, he lets her pick. As he is about to lift the cup, a gust of wind suddenly lifts all the cups, revealing that they are empty and the ball is nowhere to be found. The crowd gets angry at the conman for cheating and gives him his due punishment. Ike scolds Sadie for abandoning him, and she apologizes, explaining that she was distracted by the new sights. Noticing his outfit, she is shocked, and Ike explains that he needs to wear something inconspicuous to scout the enemy. They pick up some fruit to eat. After a while, Ike, looking serious, says the Alliance of Kings story is true, noting the rushing soldiers. Sadie, curious and puzzled, asks about the Alliance. Ike explains it's an ancient pact where countries unite in danger, having defeated the Demon Lord's army 3 times and pushing them back to Doberberg Castle. Sadie, worried, asks if it will happen again. Ike asks why she's worried since she's human and would be free if the Demon Lord's army retreated. Sadie, looking sad and resigned, explains that in human society, a slave's child remains a slave, fearing she'll be abandoned and end up like other enslaved children. Ike reassures her that the current Demon Lord is the strongest and wisest in history. Ike realizes both demons and humans have many problems and wonders how he can change that. Ike wants to further investigate why the soldiers are rushing around like that, so he asks his maid to follow as he continues his investigation. However, they are suddenly told to halt by the conman. The conman demands compensation from them, either in the form of money or with Sadie's body, and this time he has brought his big boy to ensure he doesn't end up like last time. Ike looks around and realizes that there is no one, and he freezes the big guy's legs. He then uses magic to create an ice spear and strikes the conman, which makes the conman agree to cooperate with him. Ike then asks him what the army in this town is doing, as the soldiers seem to be in quite a hurry. The conman explains that they've formed an alliance of kings to fight the demons. Ike asks if that's all he knows. The conman tells him that Rosaria's army is eager to land a blow on the Demon Lord's army before the alliance does. Ike realizes they want to win glory for their own nation before the alliance is fully formed, which will put them at an advantage during their strategy councils and increase their influence after the war. Of course, if they fail, it will put Rosaria in an awful position. He then asks the conman where they will attack. The conman says there's only one place, Evalia's, as its gate is a mess and it's poorly defended. After getting his information, Ike walks away, leaving the crooks in that state as they beg to be released. Ike returns to the office to find Lilith waiting impatiently. She complains that she couldn't find him anywhere and gets visibly jealous seeing Sadie with him, demanding to know who she is. Sadie introduces herself as Ike's maid. Lilith insults Sadie, calling her ugly, and boldly offers to become Ike's maid while hugging him. Sadie controls her anger and politely asks the demon to leave, explaining that Ike is tired. Their argument escalates into a tense standoff that even Gyre, the pig, avoids getting involved in, fearing repercussions. Meanwhile, outside of Alias, the White Rose Knights prepare for their attack. Some knights are on edge due to the eerie quietness of the area. Their instincts prove right when demons launch a surprise attack just as Commander Alistair is about to give the signal to fire rocks. The humans are quickly overwhelmed, and Alistair orders a retreat. Ike watches from the safety of the city wall, and Gyre praises Alistair for her decision to retreat. The pig commends Ike for predicting the attack, thanks to his excellent intelligence gathering. Ike tries to downplay his achievement, but suddenly an assassin shoots an arrow into his back, causing him to collapse. News of the White Rose Knights' defeat reaches a high-ranking noble who shows no tolerance for failure and orders Alistair's imprisonment. Despite objections that she's one of their best generals and it will affect morale, the noble insists she take responsibility for the failure or face consequences before their king. Meanwhile, Ike regains consciousness and finds himself bandaged up, surprised to see Sephiroth beside him. She explains she saved his life and healed him completely, leaving no scar from the arrow. He thanks her, but she worries about the implications of no human casualties, fearing it may arouse suspicion from the Demon Lord. Ike shares his goal of fostering coexistence between humans and demons, but Sephiroth warns that achieving peace is difficult amidst ongoing conflict. She advises him to rest, then disappears. Examining the arrow, Ike wonders if someone infiltrated the castle to attack him. Before he can contemplate further, Lilith bursts into the room, overjoyed to find him safe, and hugs him tightly. She expresses concern for his safety and asks about the attack. Ike tries to reassure her, but changes the subject to finding Alistair's location. After learning where Alistair is imprisoned, Ike heads to the prison. Lilith accompanies him, commenting on the intimidating appearance of the prison and insisting she doesn't want him going alone into danger. Ike, annoyed but accepting her presence, arrives at the poorly guarded prison. Their goal is to infiltrate quietly, but before Ike can finish speaking, Lilith knocks out the guards. They proceed inside, and Lilith swiftly obtains keys and Alistair's location from another guard. When guards approach, she volunteers to deal with them while Ike searches for Alistair's cell. Inside, Ike discovers Alistair's absence, but is surprised when she ambushes him from behind a door. They engage briefly, and Ike disarms her, backing off when he realizes she's a woman. Alistair questions Ike, suspicious of his motives and whether he's truly human, particularly wondering if he sent an assassin after their last battle. Their conversation is cut short as more guards arrive. Alistair holds Ike at knife point, demanding answers about his identity and intentions. The guards move steadily toward Alistair's cell, and Ike warns her not to move. Ike casts a spell called Hypersense, disrupting Alistair's senses. After being hit by the spell, Alistair feels like time has stopped, and the soldiers nearby experience the same sensation. Ike explains that he has dulled all their senses, then uses dark wind magic to blow away the nearby soldiers. A large soldier attempts to attack him from behind, but Ike dodges and uses a gravity spell to drop the soldier to the ground floor, though he ensures the soldier doesn't hit the ground hard. Observing this, Alistair wonders why he would save a human. She regains control of her body, but the floor beneath her suddenly breaks, and she starts to fall. Ike catches her just in time, and she questions why he saved her. Ike realizes he hasn't introduced himself, and says he is the leader of the Immortal Brigade in the 7th Legion of the Demon Army. Alistair recalls that he is known for defending Evalius. Ike, confirming he is part of the Demon Army, asserts that he can't be human. He asks her again if she sent an assassin after him during the last battle, but Alistair remains silent, declaring herself a knight of the kingdom with nothing to say to a demon. She offers herself up for him to kill if he wishes, and Ike then slams her against the wall, reading her mind. Alistair is confused by his actions. Lilith arrives and sees them in this compromising position, feeling jealous. She sarcastically suggests that if Ike wants to flirt, he should flirt with her instead, even offering to be cornered against a wall. Ignoring Lilith, Ike states he will leave now. Lilith protests, wanting his attention, and as they try to leave, Alistair stops them. She accuses Ike of coming to mock her for being a loser. Ike assures her he is not that kind of person, revealing he already knows she had nothing to do with the assassination attempt. Alistair is perplexed, as she never answered his question. Ike explains that he read her mind and found her heart pure. He encourages her to cheer up, noting she seemed downtrodden, and suggests it's more important to focus on what to do after being defeated. Alistair pretends not to understand, and Ike signals Lilith that they should leave. Lilith insists they should find a place to relax before leaving, suggesting they use this chance to go on a date. However, Ike dismisses her suggestion and creates a portal to return to Evalius, taking Lilith with him. The scene shifts to Ike at his mansion in Evalius, where he gives Sadie some rice. Sadie is unfamiliar with it, so Ike explains. He informs her that he was tasked with doubling the city's tax revenue. He mentions that Evalius is an agricultural city where fertile land is crucial, and while wheat is the main crop, rice has a much higher production efficiency. Despite Ike's simple explanation, the maid struggles to understand. Ike elaborates, saying that rice yields more per acre than wheat, meaning fewer people will need to farm, thus increasing overall productivity and efficiency. Once humans move away from agriculture, they can start working in other professions like weaponsmithing and brick masonry. More people will also become involved in the service sector. Sati, puzzled, asks what the service sector is. Ike explains that it includes professions like chefs and other related jobs. He tells her that as long as these professions continue to grow, the country will become more prosperous. He then asks if Sadie understood everything he explained. It's evident that the confused maid didn't grasp even half of it, so Ike simplifies it by saying that it means everyone will have plenty to eat, and the government will collect a lot of taxes. Hearing this, Sadie exclaims that her master is amazing. Ike then instructs her to start cooking the rice. Sadie, looking troubled, asks how she should cook it. Ike admits he has never cooked rice before and has no idea either. Surprised that there's something he doesn't know, Sadie is told to figure it out on her own. Ike mentions he has heard that they should start cooking with a low flame, then switch to high, and they shouldn't lift the lid during the process. Sadie remarks that this sounds like a magic spell, and Ike replies that he is counting on her to manage. While she cooks, he will take care of other business. The scene shifts to Ike's entire army gathered in town. One of his soldiers, Piggy, wonders why Ike has assembled them. Ike assures them they will soon learn his plans. He has concluded that the arrow shot at him belongs to the enemy's armory. But Alistair of the White Rose Knights was not involved in the assassination attempt. This implies that the person who shot the arrow was disguised as a member of the White Rose Knights, intending to frame the enemy. This leaves only one unpleasant possibility. There is a spy among his army. Using his mind-reading abilities, Ike identifies the spy by scouring through his soldiers' thoughts. He finds a goblin thinking about not being found out and realizes this goblin is the traitor. Ike confronts him. The scene then cuts to Ike visiting Saphiro while she is bathing. She asks why he is intruding, noting it must be urgent. Ike, unfazed by her nudity, suggests he can wait outside if she prefers. Saphiro, however, acknowledges that there is a traitor in their army and asks if Ike has identified them. Ike reveals that it is the vice leader of the 7th Legion, the one-eyed goblin named Jace. Sapphire isn't surprised, saying she expected him to be the traitor. Ike expresses concern about dealing with Jace, who is smart and experienced in combat. Saphiro, stepping out of the bath, firmly states that the course of action is clear. Jace must pay for his treachery. The scene shifts to Jace discovering that Ike has come to visit their general. Surprised that Ike has fully recovered after recently being shot, he questions the archer, who confirms that he did shoot Ike and that the arrow pierced his chest. Another soldier informs Jace that they have lost contact with their spy in the Immortal Brigade, making it clear that Ike has uncovered their scheme. Realizing this, Jace decides to gather his forces, stating that he won't back down now. Soon after, another soldier tells Jace that Ike is here in person. Jace goes to meet him, remarking that Ike should have sent a notice if he planned to visit. Ike replies that he was just dropping by to say hello since he was in the area. Noticing the large number of troops Jace has assembled, Ike asks if there is a battle going on. Jace retorts that it is none of Ike's business and reminds him that he governs these lands. He also mentions hearing that Ike was injured in the last battle and advises him to be more careful as a brigade leader. Monsters surround Ike from behind as well. Playing along, Ike admits he was reflecting on his carelessness and should have been more vigilant about traitors. Jace realizes that Ike knows everything and wonders why Ike has come alone, noting that his own troops are twice as powerful as Ike's. Jace claims his soldiers are eager for Ike's blood, and that Ike is naive if he thinks he can defeat them all. Ike is glad all of Jace's troops are present, and suddenly, blazing stones begin to fall from the sky, indiscriminately destroying the town. It's revealed that Saphiro is behind this spell, confident that Ike can handle himself. Ike isn't surprised by her chaos, recalling that he told her reconstruction would be difficult, but she never listens. She uses her forces to attack the remaining soldiers as Ike confronts Jace. He tells Jace to surrender, questioning if he will wait until he loses everything. Jace orders his soldiers to fight Ike, but Ike effortlessly defeats them. Jace tries to escape, cursing Saphiro for ruining his plans. Using a secret route to flee the town, Jace reflects that while he might escape today, the real battle is just beginning. However, before he can get away, a blazing rock almost hits him. Ike catches up to him, revealing that he attached a familiar to Jace earlier. Furious, Jace accuses Ike of ruining his plans, but Ike insists he should surrender, as there is no other option. Refusing to give up, Jace attacks Ike, who defends with magic and counters with wind magic, noting that Jace's scheming has dulled his combat skills. Jace attempts to retaliate, but Ike binds him with magic, declaring that it's over. Jace concedes defeat and tries to flatter Ike, proposing they team up to take over the Demon Lord's army. He criticizes the current demon lord for being too soft on humans and suggests that with Ike's skills and intelligence, they could change the demon army. Ike rejects Jace's offer. In a last-ditch effort, Jace frees one hand to throw a knife at Ike, but Ike dodges and uses hypersense to dull Jace's senses. Ike notes that Jace mentioned having a partner and demands to know who it is. Jace refuses to reveal the identity, and Saphiro arrives, threatening torture to extract the information. Ike asks to handle the interrogation his way, but Saphiro argues it's too time-consuming. Before she can act, Jace is poisoned. Ike attempts to detoxify him, but the poison is too strong. Saphiro points out that Jace has been abandoned and urges him to name his partner, as loyalty no longer matters. Jace finally agrees and reveals the name. Ike feels a pang of pity for Jace, realizing his own capacity for empathy might be a weakness one day. The scene then cuts to the Demon Lord's castle, where Ike and Saphiro report the recent conspiracy. Saphiro names Bastio, the 3rd Legion's general, as the mastermind behind the plot, stating that he conspired with her Legion's vice leader and targeted them to seize the Demon Lord's position. Bastio, present in the room, is asked by the Demon Lord to explain himself. After hearing Saphiro, the ruler requested the input of a 4th party who entered the room, surprising the commanders of the 7th Battalion. It was Bastio, defending himself by arguing that Saphiro and her accomplice had killed the vice commander to frame him and take over the 3rd Battalion. He accused Saphiro of being a witch, implying that such treachery was expected from someone like her. Upon hearing this insult, Saphiro instinctively released her magical power, but Darakutan urged everyone to calm down. The Lord emphasized that demons naturally seek more power and glory, and it wouldn't make sense for a leader to punish subordinates for such ambition, as it would leave no one to serve. She then questioned Bastio if he thought she wouldn't uncover his plot, surprising the Headless Knight. Turning to Saphiro, the Demon Lord acknowledged her loyalty, but criticized her for failing to maintain her subordinates' loyalty. She declared that both Saphiro and Bastio must be punished according to the Code of Laws. However, not wanting to lose 2 commanders in the midst of a war, Darakutan decreed that the matter be settled through a duel, where the winner would be deemed truthful. This, she said, was the proper way for demons to resolve their disputes. Later, Saphiro explained to Ike that the duel would involve magical creatures known as puppet soldiers. Each commander would control an army of 50 puppets, but could not participate directly. The commander who defeated all the opponent's puppets would win, and the loser would be executed. Ike questioned the complexity of this setup, suggesting direct combat would be simpler. Saphiro explained that Darakutan wanted to test their command abilities. She then revealed that commanders could choose a substitute for the duel and selected Ike for this role. Indignant, Ike argued that the commander's life was at stake and that Saphiro should ensure victory herself. She responded that she had chosen the strategy with the highest probability of success, believing Ike had surpassed her abilities. She took his hand, entrusting him with her life. Reflecting on the immense burden of the upcoming confrontation, Ike confided in the loyal Giant, who noted Ike's uncharacteristic silence. Ike admitted he was contemplating how their battalion commander was as eccentric as the Demon Lord. The orc laughed, agreeing, but pointed out Ike's own quirks, like his reluctance to kill without reason. Accepting his role in the duel, Ike began strategizing. Giant complained about the ugly puppets and asked how they would fight. Ike explained that the puppets followed commands precisely, making the duel a pure test of command skill, with any weapons in the room being usable. Returning to his office to strategize, Ike found himself stuck. When Sadie arrived with tea, he asked her how she would win a battle. Initially perplexed, Sadie said she preferred solving problems with tea. Ike pressed on, asking how she would fight if necessary. She suggested using a broom for its reach, prompting Ike to agree that long-range attacks were advantageous. He elaborated that a sword was longer than a dagger, a spear longer than a sword, and a bow and arrow provided the longest reach. Sadie mentioned her master's passion for crossbows, and Ike agreed they were effective, but still too common. He needed something to surprise the enemy, like firearms. When Sadie asked what firearms were, Ike described them as weapons that could hit an opponent from hundreds of miles away, preventing counterattacks. Impressed, but unsure how Ike would acquire such powerful weapons, Sadie was reassured when Ike mentioned the 7th Battalion commander's talent as an alchemist. However, upon arriving at Sephiroth's, she admitted there were limits to her abilities. Frustrated, Ike described firearms as iron cylinders with explosive gunpowder to propel projectiles. Tired of the technical discussion, Sephiroth splashed water on him, inviting him to join her in the water. Meanwhile, Bastio was also making his preparations for the duel. That night, he learned that Ike would be fighting in place of Sephiroth, leading the messenger to believe that Sephiroth was afraid of Bastio. However, Bastio pointed out that Sephiroth, being the city's commander, surely had a plan in place. Admiring his sword, Bastio's subordinate explained that it was made from the fangs of a black dragon and could cut through anything. They would have enough swords made for all the puppets. But Bastio wanted more. At that moment, an orc arrived, having completed a mission, and informed Bastio that victory was certain. At the same time, Ike stepped out of the bath after reflecting on his predicament. He couldn't believe that Sephiroth had sent him, knowing her life was at risk. Suddenly, Darakuten appeared and saw Ike without his demon armor, prompting him to bow in desperation. She didn't recognize him without his mask, and ordered him to untie a cloth bundle he was carrying, revealing various firearms. Darakuten called out Ike's name, asking if these were what he was looking for. Ike tried to deny it, but she informed him that there was no need to hide anymore, as Romberg had already told her that he passed all his knowledge and magic to Ike. Incredulous, Ike asked why he wasn't killed before. She revealed that, despite being powerful, no power is enough without the right allies. Darakuten sought people to fight for her, envisioning a world she desired, and she believed Ike was an important addition to her cause. Observing the weapons provided by Darakuten, Ike dared not refuse her request, and she withdrew. Wasting no time, Ike presented the firearms to Sephiroth and asked her to make lead projectiles. The witch conjured one that resembled a cannonball. Ike commented that it was too big to fit in such a small barrel, but the mage, annoyed at the precise work, noted it would ruin her skin. Internally, Ike reflected that Sephiroth might not realize she would die if he lost the fight. At that moment, an explosion blew a hole in the wall, and a demon emerged from the smoke. It was Fiorentina, one of Ike's servants, who had created what he requested, despite not knowing what it was. She didn't understand how mixing sulfur with charcoal and saltpeter could cause an explosion, so Ike explained the concept of gunpowder. Sephiroth then constructed appropriate ammunition for the firearm, and Ike asked her to produce 500 of these projectiles. Reluctantly, she asked Fiorentina to handle the task due to the damage to her skin. Gyron offered to help with determination, but Ike and the servant asked the orc to stay out of it. The next day, the duel was about to begin, and the arena was filled with monsters and demons eagerly watching the combat. From her throne in the highest part of the arena, Darakuten watched the preparations while Bastio laughed at Ike for coming to the war with only shields while his puppets had full armor. Observing the enemy's equipment, Ike asked if Bastio's puppets were holding Damascus steel, confirmed by the enemy. Damascus steel, the strongest of all metals, was a gift from the Demon Lord. Hearing this, Ike looked up to Darakuten and remembered her words about him being important by her side in the war trenches. Assuming she wanted a fair fight with no favorites, Ike suspected she might be testing him. The announcer declared the duel's start, and Bastio ordered his archers to fire, killing some of Ike's puppets who didn't shield themselves in time. Next, Bastio ordered his spearmen to advance, and more of Ike's puppets fell. Holding only shields, Ike's puppets merely defended until they were defeated one by one. Bastio laughed and taunted Ike, calling the situation boring. Ike didn't respond until a gunshot echoed through the arena, killing Bastio's puppet and changing the situation. A line of shooters followed, opening fire on the opponents. Bastio was confused by the enemy's equipment as his puppets were slaughtered until none remained. After the fight, datta approached the defeated Bastio and offered him two options: take his own life or be killed by her. The knight chose a third alternative, one worthy of a demon. An orc archer, who had conspired with Bastio, shot an arrow at datta, but she caught it effortlessly. Unexpectedly, the arrow had an explosive attached, which detonated, engulfing everyone nearby. Other explosives around the arena went off, devastating the stands, while the 3rd Battalion launched an ambush, and Bastio declared himself the new demon lord. The story then shifts to the past, where Romberg stumbles upon a cave and finds wolves feasting on their prey. As he approaches, the wolves try to attack him, but he swiftly dispatches them with his magic. He then discovers that their prey was a couple who had desperately shielded their baby. To his relief, he notices the baby is still alive. Meanwhile, in the arena, Bastio's forces are rebelling, ruthlessly killing every demon not aligned with them. Bastio observes the chaos and declares that his rule is about to begin. Explosions continue to rock the arena, and Ike is devastated to witness Bastio's forces slaughtering innocent demons. Bastio then tells Ike that the Demon Lord's forces are now under his control, inviting Ike to join his army and offering to make him the general of the 7th Legion. Ike considers the offer, but retorts that Bastio should not talk so confidently, as he will never become the Demon Lord. Bastio calls him a fool for not siding with the winning faction and surrounds him with his army. He predicts Ike's demise, and some soldiers attack, but Ike repels them with a wind spell. Bastio orders a full-on assault, but Ike uses his Dark Lance spell to deal with the attackers. A skeleton even uses its head as a bomb to distract Ike and strike with a sword, but Ike blocks it with a barrier. Despite taking down many soldiers, Ike is still surrounded. The soldiers hurl their spears at him, but he dodges every one of them while flying and then uses a spell called Death Rain from above. The attack injures most of the remaining soldiers. Ike then quickly flies toward Bastio and unleashes a point-blank Hell Blast spell. Even after taking the hit directly, Bastio survives and attacks Ike from behind, but Ike dodges. More explosions rock the arena, leading to its destruction. Afterward, Bastio heals his severed hand and explains that such attacks won't be enough to defeat him. He reminds Ike that he is a Dullahan, and his soldiers are undead, hence their title, the Undead Legion. The fallen soldiers rise again. The skeletons use their skulls as bombs, and Magul soldiers attack Ike. Ike freezes the Magul soldiers and defeats others with physical attacks. However, the relentless demon soldiers keep coming. Bastio explains that his army can fight endlessly, and no matter how skilled Ike is with magic, he will eventually exhaust his power and fall. Regretting that such a fine asset must die, Bastio thinks Ike could have been of better use on his side. An archer from earlier attacks Ike with a bomb. Although Ike shields himself with a barrier, the bomb partially breaks through. Bastio is surprised that Ike is still alive, but attributes it to Ike being the commander of the Immortal Brigade. He states that the outcome is inevitable and they should end this now. Ike realizes he needs a plan as continuing to blast spells will deplete his magic. He recalls that the undead are just corpses, and dark magic is ineffective against them. Suddenly, he gets an idea as the demon soldiers attack. He casts a spell with a golden light, obliterating the attacking demons and those nearby. Bastio is baffled, and archers try to shoot Ike again, but Saphiro severs the archer's hand. Saphiro's army is outside, defeating the rest of Bastio's forces. The Piggy and Lilith are also in the fray, and the soldiers are thrilled to be taken down by Lilith due to her unique fighting style. Saphiro then informs Ike that the rebels outside have been dealt with. Bastio, seeing Saphiro, worries about losing in a 2-on-1 fight. The Demon Lord reassures him to focus on Ike. Bastio, surprised to see Saikyou alive, is offered another chance at survival. She promises to spare his life if he can defeat Ike in a duel. Bastio is taken aback by this. Ike moves toward Bastio, asserting that he can handle him easily. Bastio charges as well, attacking Ike, who defends with a barrier. Bastio strikes repeatedly, claiming to be stronger and blaming the Demon Lord for Ike's situation, mockingly suggesting Ike beg for mercy. Ike then dispels his barrier, leaps to attack Bastio, who counters with a beam. Ike counters with his golden spell, severing Bastio's hand. Saikyou is amazed, realizing Ike is using white magic and wondering how long he has had this ability. She notices the Demon Lord is unsurprised by this development. Bastio charges again, but Ike has a flashback before the attack. In the flashback, a young Ike stares at a withering flower. Romberg approaches, asking what he's doing. After Ike responds with a nonchalant "nothing," Romberg takes him inside to teach him magic. Later, Ike successfully casts a spell and asks Romberg if there's a spell to revive a withered flower. Romberg explains that such a spell exists in the realm of white magic. Ike expresses interest in learning it, but Romberg discourages this, emphasizing that Ike, as a demon, should focus on curse magic. He explains that white magic is challenging for demons as it stems from a heart of mercy, which demons supposedly lack. Romberg, knowing Ike has a human heart, warns him that white magic can be more dangerous than any other weapon. He advises Ike to keep his white magic abilities a secret, and Ike agrees. Back in the present, Ike counters Bastio's charge, breaking Bastio's sword in the process. Ike tells Bastio that aspiring to become the Demon Lord was an ambition far beyond his reach. He declares that he cannot forgive Bastio for sacrificing his subordinates' lives for personal gain and attempting to betray his master. While Ike acknowledges that such actions might be considered acceptable for a demon, he cannot condone them. He emphasizes that a world where one tramples others to reach the top is fundamentally wrong. Bastio, enraged by Ike's audacity, tries to put him in his place, but Ike silences him with a spell, using the white magic known as Holy Light of Destruction. Ike finishes off Bastio, purifying him and leaving behind only his armor. Saikyou then asks Ike if Romberg taught him that magic. Ike confirms, and she expresses relief that he won the duel. Ike realizes that Saikyou had anticipated this outcome from the start, which is why she had him represent her in the duel while she prepared her forces to handle the rebels. Saikyou believes that there shouldn't be any further issues since Ike emerged victorious. However, the Demon Lord points out a significant problem. Bastio's rebellion has left the 3rd Legion without a general, and Ike must take responsibility for this. Confused, Ike listens as she tells him to become the new general of the 3rd Legion. This proposition catches Ike off guard, and the Demon Lord leaves him to ponder the decision. Later, Ike reunites with the soldiers of the Immortal Brigade. The piggy embraces him, crying with relief that he's safe. Lilith, feeling jealous, thinks she should be by Ike's side instead, leading to some playful bickering between them. The scene shifts to Saikyou talking to the Demon Lord, asserting that she should have the authority to manage Ike's appointment since she is his superior. The Demon Lord is surprised by her disapproval of Ike's promotion. Saikyou insists that since Ike is her subordinate, she should oversee his future. The Demon Lord decides they should hear directly from Ike. When Ike enters, the Demon Lord asks if he has made his decision. The scene then cuts to Ike and Saikyou leaving the castle grounds. Saikyou is frustrated, not knowing what transpired between Ike and the Demon Lord. She asks if Ike revealed his true identity to the Demon Lord. Ike, urging her to speak quietly, hints that the entire world could discover his secret if she's not careful. Saikyou then calmly inquires why the Demon Lord wasn't surprised by Ike's actions, wondering about the nature of their relationship. In a flashback to the castle, Ike reported to the Demon Lord that the citizens are finally adjusting to life in Avelius. Initially confused by the idea of living alongside humans, his subordinates have now grown accustomed to it. The humans feel the same, and Avelius has transformed into a peaceful city where humans and demons coexist. The two races work together and support each other in times of need. Ike then revealed to the demon lord that his ultimate goal is the coexistence of humans and demons. Removing his mask, he shared his vision openly. Sephiroth, shocked by this revelation, listens as Ike refuses the demon lord's promotion offer. He explains that he still has much to learn from Sephiroth. In return, he promises to make Avelius the first city where humans and demons live together in harmony. The demon lord finds this idea quite agreeable. Daracuten reflects at her window on the meaning of everything she has just heard. Next to her, Ike observes the distant landscape of the city. He governs the following day, excited. He is confident that the soil and climate of Avelia allow them to use the Norfolk system, a farming method that lets them grow various crops without leaving the field vacant. This excites Sadie, knowing she can eat turnips until she's full. Speaking of which, Ike would love for all the inhabitants to be busy building a place where races can live together in harmony. However, this harmony is nothing more than a fairy tale on the front lines of the war between humans and demons, where violence is the only path that opens up before the combatants and the victims of this bloody clash. Away from the incessant conflict, Ike uses his magic to summon rain and revolutionize farming in Avelia. In the past, the most well-known technique was to grow wheat and then let the field rest, creating pasture for the cattle. Now, to avoid leaving the field vacant for so long, they will grow barley, wheat, clover, and turnips simultaneously, always keeping the field occupied. Using this method, humans and demons will never run out of food. With these final words, the citizens of Avelia, who were following the implementation of the Norfolk technique, celebrated around their leader Ike. Later, Sadie serves tea to the governor and congratulates him on becoming the vice commander. Suddenly, Jiren bursts into the leader's office in a panic, calling him by name. Sadie corrects the orc, saying the leader should be addressed by his title. The subordinate apologizes profusely for his lack of decorum and accepts any punishment. Stumbling over his words, the monster finds it curious that Ike refused the position of commander of the Army Corps. Tired of the assistant's random chatter, the mage asks him to get to the point. So Jiren alerts him that the Alliance of Kings started to take action the previous night. The 2nd Army Corps, which was trying to take Alesta, was destroyed, and no one ever imagined that such an experienced and powerful battalion could be defeated the way it was. Sadie asks what the Alliance of Kings is, so Ike explains that it is an ancient human treaty. When the Demon Lord's army becomes too strong for one nation to face alone, all the countries on the continent unite to face the threat together. This treaty has occurred 3 times in the past, and every time the demons were defeated. To make matters worse, Avelia will likely be the next target of the human alliance because, besides being a border region with enemy kingdoms, it is a strategic territory due to containing Arsenal, a very important base. Aware of this, Ike imagines that this union among men can turn the tide in their favor, especially if they retake Arsenal. If this happens, the monster army will be forced to retreat to Doberberg, where the Demon Lord's castle is, and will certainly be cornered. At the same time, Ike's dream of creating a city where both races can live in harmony will go down the drain. To prevent this from happening, the mage assassinates, knowing there is only one way to overcome these overwhelming numbers. Moments later, in a meeting with his 2 commanders, Fiorentina holds a firearm in her hands after discovering that it is impossible to produce this weapon with alchemy, because with just one shot, the weapon breaks. Therefore, there is a clear limit to what alchemy can do in terms of the durability and precision of weaponry. Zephyr questions if they can simply destroy the enemy with magic, but Ike fears that his superior will devastate the entire city, so he prefers to arm the population and organize a defense that does not destroy the defender's home. Regarding this, Fiorentina suggests that they assemble the metal and wood parts one by one to build the rifles. Knowing that these parts are small and intricate, the demon advises seeking the dwarves to provide this service. Zephyr considers the idea, but remembers that this race lost the war against humans, and now wanders the world separately. And this task would require a large number of them. To gather the necessary amount, Ike believes the hope lies in rescuing the dwarf king, who is imprisoned in the kingdom of Isma. The name of this supreme leader is Gunther. During the war, humans had devastated the dwarven cities and left the chief of that race kneeling before the death of almost all his kind. Despite the certain defeat and humiliation, the dwarf king ensures that he will not allow humans to use dwarf technology for war. However, circumstances prevent the defeated ruler from making any demands, and in the end, he has no choice, especially since his own son, Batson, is being held hostage to get what they want from the enemy race's leader. The humans want the dwarves to use their skills for Isthmus, because only then will they allow the defeated to live. Long after the surrender, Gunther spent his long days in the cell wondering how his son and the others were doing. Suddenly, he hears a voice. This scene shows several laughs from the guards outside the bars, and upon seeing what was happening, the soldiers seemed dazed by some strange enchantment or drunkenness, and a demon appears to open the dwarf's cell with the key. The dwarf questions why a demon would help him, but Lilith doesn't have time to tell the whole story. As the rescued insist, she opens the door. On hearing a justification, even aggressively demanding it, the demon casts the same spell on him that she cast on the guards. Jyrn asks what's going on, and Lilith has no fear in replying that she got fed up with the bearded guy screaming in her ear. With that said, she leaves without saying goodbye, while Jyrn ends up stating alone that this guy she knocked out is simply the supreme leader of an entire race. Carrying the rescued one on his shoulders, the orc is relieved not to see guards in the corridors as they escape. On the other hand, Lilith laments not having anyone to play with so far. Jyrn reminds Lilith that their orders are to rescue the prisoner without being noticed. But Lilith doesn't care about orders. Ignoring the orc, she sniffs something strange coming from him, teasing him by saying it smells like pig ugliness, which angers Jyrn. Suddenly, guards spot them in the corridor and attack. Lilith, happy as ever, uses her magic powder to knock them out, while Jyrn remembers they weren't supposed to engage in unnecessary fights. He still doesn't realize Lilith doesn't care about orders and almost cries, threatening to tell their superior everything. Another guard attacks Jyrn, who impulsively punches him, causing the man's head to hit the iron door. Lilith then threatens to report Jyrn, making him beg like a child. At the dungeon exit, they run into a battalion of men. Lilith, having promised Ike not to kill anyone, defeats her enemies her way. Watching from a distance, Ike grumbles that they weren't supposed to be seen, but Lilith isn't good at stealth. With an entire regiment chasing them, Ike conjures a barrier to separate the men from the monsters and praises Lilith and Jyrn for their efforts. The demoness thanks Ike and offers a kiss, which he declines. Ike then sees Jyrn carrying the dwarf and remarks that's not how a king should be carried. Panicking, Jyrn spins the dwarf to wake him up. The next day, Ike shows Gunther a firearm and asks for more to be produced. Gunther, though believing it's possible, refuses to cooperate, seeing demons as no different from humans in their selfishness. Ike understands but promises to show Gunther that Avelia is different. Outside, Gunther sees men and demons working together. Ike explains his plan to create a harmonious society and asks for Gunther's help. Gunther is pleased but hesitant, remembering how humans destroyed everything important to the dwarves. Ike promises to ask the demon lord to rebuild the dwarven kingdom. Gunther, furious at the arrogance, points out that a kingdom needs many dwarves, who are now scarce. Ike shows Gunther his son and other dwarves he thought were dead, motivating them to work hard for their goals. Seeing his people together again, Gunther agrees to cooperate. When greeting the ruler of Avelia, Gunther feels a strange warmth from Ike's hand. Later, Sadie offers Ike tea, but he tells her to rest and suggests she read. Learning she can't read, Ike promises to teach her. Lilith arrives, announcing she brought back all the dwarves. Seeing Sadie close to Ike, she throws a fit, thinking Sadie is flirting with him. Sadie mocks her, and they butt heads. Jyrn arrives in a rush. Meanwhile, a human soldier informs his general that the dwarf king was rescued by demons, and the officer is curious about their plans. Another messenger reports Avelius has about 500 soldiers, but with brigade commander's support, this will likely increase. The general, learning his subordinate's army is 12,000 strong, smiles and announces it's time to act. The next day, Jyrn was climbing a cliff with the grace of a pig, despite his master's encouragement. The servant remarked that it was easy for the mage to talk, because he could use his spells to climb in the blink of an eye. A human on the mission helped Jyrn take the final step to the top, while Ike was pleased that the assistant was getting quality exercise, though Jyrn felt he was losing his mind and a few years of his life in the process. To the orcs' relief, they could see the cave that was today's destination from there. Inside, the mage was delighted to find natural saltpeter. With this resource, combined with the dwarf's talent, they could advance the project of building weapons for the war, potentially turning the tide for Avelius. As days passed, training began for the local forces with firearms in hand. Using war tactics known by the human disguised in the battalion, the goblins fired and amazed Jyrn, who never imagined seeing such powerful shots. The chiefs of these races were impressed to learn that Ike paid the humans of Ivali's to work, which was previously unthinkable, as the only language known in this land was that of slavery. Next, a representative of a gargoyle species appeared in Ike's room. Being an old friend of the commander, the monster insisted on referring to him by his title, but the human preferred to be called by his name, which was also uncommon according to the hierarchical respect rules of any military junta in this world. Officially starting the meeting after the last guest's arrival, Fiorentina announced that Zephyr had left the deputy commander in charge of everything in this battle. The troll agreed with this, while the wolfman commented that Ike had been able to destroy Bastio, which was a significant feat. Therefore, the gargoyle joined the chorus, and the three monster races united with Avelius's trenches against the enemy. However, the last chief to join the war reminded them that the enemies had 12,000 men in their army, while they had only 2,000. The wolf leader thought it was easy for each fighter to kill 6 enemies, but Ike admitted that not everyone was as skilled as the werewolf brigade, so they needed to devise a strategy that would make a difference in the conflict, given the numerical disadvantage. Speaking of which, the gargoyle recommended attacking the opponents at night, as darkness had been a monstrosity since the beginning of time. But Ike knew the enemies were prepared for this, certainly using light and detection spells to avoid being caught off guard. Considering this, even though the enemy's numbers were absurdly large, the commander believed the fall would be equally significant. Given the enemy's confidence, Ike wanted them to attack, and when the humans' morale was at its peak, Avelia's forces would crush the rival forces with all their might. This had to be done quickly and cleanly to avoid as many casualties as possible for future conflicts. Meanwhile, the humans gathered their massive numbers for a frontal assault. Sadie and Jyrn organized some gear and cleaned the chief's office so he could focus on the strategies to be developed. The maid commented that the castle was quite agitated with all this mobilization, and Ike was curious about the girl's lack of fear in mentioning the war. According to Sadie, her confidence in Avelia's troops made her feel more at ease. In her mind, the local forces were made up of individuals of good character, which the ruler agreed with. The maid intended to help as much as she could when the battle began, such as feeding the soldiers to keep morale high and their bellies full. Thanks to the Norfolk system Ike implemented in local agriculture, Ayla was full of provisions and wouldn't struggle when it came to food. With this in mind, the commander thought of a meal that could be an essential ally on the front lines. Considering they harvested a lot of rice, He suggested making fried rice for the fighters, as it was easy to prepare and nutritious. Without ceremony, Sadie got to work and learned on the fly how to make this ration for the military, based on egg, salt, vegetables, greens, and meat pieces. In the end, she was proud of her work, as was Ike. But when they were about to taste the food that would be a reference in the trenches, Jairn came running. Sadie said, and prevented the ruler from revealing his identity. The orc had smelled it from afar and didn't think it was fair for them to eat without him. So another plate was set for the leader's assistant. Next, Lilith also approached and didn't want to miss out on the experience. So another meal was placed on the table. Thus, while everyone ate with joy in their eyes, Ike ended up just watching, unable to remove his mask. After eating everything, Lilith asked for another portion. So Sadie served a well-filled plate. The demon looked at the human with disdain because it was evident that Sadie wanted to fatten Lilith. As a result, the two continued their rivalry with electric barbs. Jairn found it strange that his master wasn't eating the fried rice, so Ike had to lie that he would try it later. To change the subject, he asked the assistant how it tasted, and the orc confessed that he was amazed while he gulped down more food, leaving Ike with an expression that under the mask would undoubtedly be the same as a starving orphan in a cold alley of Doberberg. After this, the army commander saw his troops gathered and his wall built in record time. Now it was just a matter of putting everything planned into practice. As hours passed, the orc on watch noticed the arrival of endless waves of men marching toward Avelius. So the trumpets sounded, and the mobilization for the confrontation began once and for all on the brink of a bloodbath. Within the walls, the population reached a peak of distress upon hearing the sound that precedes them. As the goblins took their positions with rifles in hand, Gunther, the dwarf king, uttered a silent prayer to invoke luck for his comrades. Meanwhile, the brigade of werewolves, trolls, and gargoyles prepared for the onset of war. Rushing as usual, Jairn burst into the chief's office to announce what had just happened, prompting Sadie to wish the supreme commander of the army good luck in taking command of the wall. The wizard watched the enemy troops march toward his city as night followed the steady steps of the humans. He then reminded his fighters that if the Alliance forces gathered around Arsenal, it must be prevented at all costs. With that said, the monstrous forces within the city's walls screamed and roared to boost their morale. The volume was such that it could be heard by the human general, who, despite this, felt frustrated to see that the resistance of Avelius was much weaker than he had thought. The officer beside him noted that the best warriors from each region were concentrated in the human army at this very moment, practically guaranteeing victory. Among the human machinery, catapults and ballistae were positioned to devastate the enemy wall. Indeed, the men's morale was as high as possible under the circumstances. According to the general, this would not be a war, but an extermination of this horde of monsters. With that, he ordered the massacre to begin. The endless lines of men marched toward the city along with the machinery. They attacked the city, but the magical shield absorbed the damage once more. With this, Ike was pleased that the enemy had taken his bait. Lilith took the opportunity to flirt with the most incredible commander of Doberberg, but he warned her that flattery would get her nowhere, leaving the demoness looking foolish. Regardless, the wizard could not predict the allied army's next move, so all that remained was to wait. Thus, the humans persisted with the same strategy, but the projectiles struck the barrier once again. Jairn and Lilith began to mock the enemy's lack of intelligence, but Ike noticed some magical intervention in the enemy trench that nullified his spell and left his wall vulnerable. Below, wizards united to cast the spells necessary for this to happen. With the strategies set, Success Unit 1 was ordered to advance. The facts were on the table. Ike needed to think quickly to avoid the annihilation of his people. Jairn alerted that the riflemen were ready, but the commander ordered them to hold fire to make way for the giant. Massive boulders were hurled at the enemy lines, crushing a large number of men who were vulnerable to the goblins' arrows. With their shields, The enemy protected themselves as best they could, but the rocks were literally unavoidable and continued to spill human blood on the front line. The Alliance responded in kind, shooting arrows at the walls of Avelius, while Ike tried to control the battle with his magical interventions in a personal duel against the goblins. Soon, the first Alliance unit reached the edge of the wall and threw up their ladders to initiate the frontal assault. Goblin archers tried to prevent the advance alongside trolls who hurled stones at the opponents. Next to the general, the second in command admitted that the monsters were giving more trouble than expected, but that none of this would prevent victory. The general only thought about what was for dinner, underestimating Avelius's resistance against the goblins. To expedite his favorite meal of the day, he ordered the catapults to be fired exclusively. The subordinate officer pointed out that the allied men would be hit, but the general did not care about that. As soon as the order was obeyed, Ike tried to block the impact once again, but his spell was nullified by the enemy wizards. With this, the devastation was widespread, turning the battlefield into total chaos, where monsters, demons, and men were flung into the air by the Supreme Leader's ruthless assault. Fighting for his life, Gyron managed a moment to raise his head and witness the deaths of all those who took the front line of this war, which was becoming increasingly horrifying. Not even the demons approved of such a vile measure to achieve victory. Ike, who once controlled his strategy to prevent the enemy's advance, now gazed at the destruction around him, with all those who worked day after day alongside him to build a more united and strong Avelius now dead at his feet. This sight filled the wizard with rage, while the human general flashed a smile at the success of his deplorable tactic. Even so, there was no time to look back, so the deputy commander of the attack ordered the second unit to advance. Using the breaches in the wall as entry points, the men collided with the resistance forces, orcs who fired in response to the imminent invasion. As the tide increasingly turned in favor of the Alliance, Ike gripped his scepter with growing strength, anger, and fear faced with the real danger of Avelius turning to ruins before his eyes. Meanwhile, Sadie maintained her courage as she tended to the wounded fighters, who were becoming more numerous. Wiping the sweat from her brow, her once unshakable hope began to fracture as the city was overrun. On the human side, the general in charge of the offensive calmly sips his tea, certain that his victory will come sooner or later. He orders the third unit to attack, adding more enemies against Ivelia's already outnumbered forces. Ike notices that events are progressing faster than he anticipated, so he knows he must stay alert to ensure everything goes as planned. The monsters who could be rescued in time were brought to the makeshift first aid unit, where Sadie tried to maintain her focus and, most importantly, keep the few combatants alive. On the front line, Lily and the other demons faced enemy soldiers swarming like ants through the breach in the wall. After defeating yet another opponent, Lily sees the third unit arriving with all its strength intact. Fiorentina takes the rear and orders her troops not to let the enemy pass, while Gyron positions himself with the goblins armed with firearms, terrified of hitting their allies in the chaotic mess. Suddenly, the werewolves appear to take the vanguard, using their claws and teeth to make significant advances for Avelius' lines. They gain reinforcement from ferocious, powerful monsters to contain the threat. Alongside them, the goblins armed with rifles fire from the top of the wall, surprising the men trying to invade, who had never seen such equipment before. Facing this, the third unit of the Alliance has no choice but to retreat. But the werewolves subdued their opponents with great skill, giving them no chance to retreat. Amid the fleeing men, the wolves hear a trumpet from Avelius. On the day of the war meeting, Ike had said this battle needed to be quick, clean, and with minimal casualties. The monsters agreed, but they couldn't imagine how this could be achieved, given their visible disadvantage. Without going into more detail, the mage stated that each of them should fight with all their strength. Ball, the leader of the werewolves, sees this as a mockery from the vice commander of the 7th Battalion. But Fiorentina asks for silence to hear what the chief has to say. as there is surely a reason behind his words. Indeed, Ike explains that there is a way to achieve this. Amid the human alliance's attack, the demon invokes an alchemy skill called Devil's Thorns, a tangle of thorns that, when thrown on the ground, spreads to close the breach in the wall. At the meeting, Ike asked how long Bayo could fight with all his strength, and the leader of the werewolf brigade presumed about an hour, though most of his unit would probably be eliminated well before that. Thus, Ike negotiates for Bayo to fight for only 10 minutes, no matter what, and then retreat, according to Bayo. This is something he can promise without a doubt. After launching the Devil's Thorn, Fiorentina smiles, seeing the strategy working. After the wolves retreat, it is now the troll's turn to break through the human alliance's forces. The demon complains that she worked too hard for these brutes to destroy everything again. Moreover, she remembers Ike said part of the plan was for their allies not to follow the plan. But she doesn't know exactly what that meant, so she just goes with the flow and trusts the leader. Meanwhile, the troll chief demands his unit be destroyed, and that they massacre the humans without mercy, which indeed happens because the difference in strength between the races is enormous, giving the impression that not even one troll would die in this clash. Days earlier, Ike stipulated that once Bayo retreated, Gamos would step in with his giant warriors. The werewolf feels offended, thinking the sorcerer doesn't trust the lupines to keep fighting. So Gamos asks for silence, as he is beginning to understand where the commander is headed. Ike wants his allies to die just like they did when fixing the gates. Bayo asks someone to explain what that means, so the sorcerer emphasizes that the more one fights, the more one wears out. Therefore, the plan is to attack in shifts to confuse and exhaust the enemy, while Avelius forces take turns and preserve some of their energy to maintain full strength. Implementing the established strategy, Gamos climbs the wall and is about to kill Fiorentina, who is saved by Gyron and his rifle. On that pre-war day, though he understood the strategy, Bayo contested its effectiveness because the humans' numerical superiority was too overwhelming. But that is precisely why Ike ordered Fiorentina's alchemy and Gyron's riflemen to be prepared to level the playing field. As strategic units capable of changing the course of the battle, they must attack at a single point on the battlefield. In fact, the breach in the wall will be deliberately left open to attract the enemies to this location. Speaking of which, the commander asks if the alchemist is ready for war, and she responds that her orders are the orders of Zephyr, and she is willing to sacrifice her life to follow them. On the other hand, the mage asks the demon not to try to sacrifice her life, just as he asks everyone present and the others to do the same. After all, the strategy's goal is to minimize casualties, keeping as many combatants alive as possible. Amid the battle, after seeing the wall rebuilding, the humans prepare the catapults and ballistas to open another breach. But the gargoyles spring into action, throwing stones from the sky to destroy the weapons from a distance. Curious about his role in the battle, the leader of these monsters had heard that he was responsible for destroying the enemy's siege weapons. Ike estimated that the human forces would have 24 soldiers, excluding reserves. Their general, from a noble lineage, is cowardly and prioritizes his well-being over his army. If he senses defeat, he will act impulsively, and that's when the monsters should seize him. Ike will personally oversee this task, asking others not to intervene. With that, all leaders embraced the Immortal Brigade commander's plan, confident in their defense's success. When executed, the plan turned the tide for the monsters, transforming Avelia's despair into hope as Ike's strategy unfolded. Fiorentina hoped Zephyr was safe, wanting to know about the commander, who was tasked with the vital mission of delaying the human rear guard. On battle day, Zephyr targeted the human leader. The front line became chaotic for the human alliance, seeing their troops crushed by the monster races, a stark contrast to the general's assurances. Learning that units 2 and 3 were decimated, the general's confidence turned to anger and surprise at Avelius' resilience. Despite advice to retreat, the general ordered an all-out attack, insisting on increasing the ratio to 10-1 or even 20-1. Determined, he joined the troops to boost morale. His deputy relayed the command, and the soldiers prepared, their shouts echoing across Avalia. Gyron wondered if the humans feared the situation, while Fiorentina thought them foolish. Suddenly, the battlefield opened, dividing Avelius from the alliance, as goblins had subdued the mages to create the breach. Amidst the upheaval, the human general fell from his horse, left on foot. Nearby, Ike, angered by his men's deaths, was ready to confront the cowardly officer. The 7th Battalion's commander stated that the war would end with the general's death, but Ike offered to spare him if he retreated. The general stood, questioning who would command a retreat if he died. Then Gunther emerged, ready to defeat the human. The king of the dwarves attacked, wounding the general. As Gunther prepared to finish him, Ike's magic stopped him. Enraged, Gunther strained against magical chains, but the general surrendered, promising a retreat. The humans fled, though Gunther believed they'd return. Grateful to Ike, he also feared the decision to spare the general. Ike believed Avelius would grow stronger. With the enemy gone, the monsters celebrated with the city's humans, proud of their stand against overwhelming odds. Gyron embraced his chief, making Lilith jealous. Sadie joined, eager to stay close to Ike. The monster leaders gathered, understanding Zephyr's trust in her deputy. Bayo praised Ike's capability, but acknowledged the importance of trust and teamwork. The mage had declared victory before the battle began. Yet, one piece remained out of formation. Zephyr, surrounded by the rear guard, was released by a human officer. Approaching cautiously, he heard retreat shouts and sighed with relief. Zephyr noted his escape, promising to meet again, and withdrew with his men. Surveying Avel's clear surroundings, Zephyr watched the sunrise, acknowledging Ike's rising favor in Darakutan's eyes. Atop the city wall, the Immortal Brigade's commander removed his mask, letting his human face breathe in solitude.
The scene opens with Sapphiro praising Lyke for his recent victory. Ike humbly credits the 7th Legion for their role in the success. Sapphiro, impressed by his modesty, tells him his next mission is in Zenobia. She explains that the human army is planning to attack the demons soon, a consequence of his successful defense against the Royal Alliance. Ike understands the need for countermeasures and asks if their supplies are adequate. Sapphiro confirms that despite improved farming in Ivalius, it's still not enough to sustain their army in a full-scale war. To address this, she tasks Ike with negotiating a trade deal with the Federation in Zenobia. Ike realizes she's sending him on yet another difficult mission and wonders if she believes humans can negotiate with demons. Sapphiro confirms this and reassures Lyke that he doesn't need to worry about Ivalius. She will manage it in his absence. The scene then shifts to Piggy and Lilith barging into Ike's office, shocked that he's heading to Zenobia. Piggy insists on accompanying Ike to protect him with his life. Lilith, irritated, declares that she will go instead. They argue over who should go, but Lyke decides both will stay behind. He explains that Ivalius has gained attention, drawing in homeless people and refugees, which has led to more conflicts. He assigns Lilith to maintain peace in the town and leaves Piggy in charge of governance. Lilith worries that she might resort to violence, but Lyke strictly forbids it. Piggy reluctantly agrees to stay, though he would prefer to accompany Ike. After much convincing, Ike finally persuades them to remain in Ivalius, and they reluctantly agree to do their best. The scene transitions to Ike and Sati traveling to Zenobia on horseback. Sadie is thrilled to accompany, but feels a bit sorry for Piggy and Lilith, knowing they'd be upset if they discovered she was the one traveling with Ike. Meanwhile, in Ivalius, Lilith and Piggy realize Sati is missing and are furious when they deduce she left with Ike. As Ike and Sati approach Zenobia, Sati asks about the place. Ike explains that Zenobia isn't a country but a thriving trade city, a confederation of cities. The warm climate allows them to grow unique crops. Sadie imagines the abundance of fruits and vegetables, and Ike confirms the city has everything. He then reflects on how his negotiations will determine the fate of the Demon Lord's army. Seitai, understanding the challenge ahead, realizes why Ike brought her along, to prove that humans and demons can coexist peacefully. Their journey is interrupted by cries for help. They find a carriage under attack by the Redbeard pirates, who easily overpower the guards. Inside the carriage, a young woman is confronted by the pirates. Just as one tries to grab her, he is stopped by a mysterious force. Ike arrives using magic to capture the remaining pirates and rescue the young woman, who is flustered by his resemblance to Sadie. She introduces herself as Uriah Octave, the daughter of Zenobia's leader, surprising Ike. The scene cuts to Ike, Satai, and Uriah traveling together in the carriage. Uriah thanks Ike for saving her life, and Ike thanks her for taking them to Zenobia. She is impressed by his magic and asks if he's a noble. Ike introduces himself as Reich, a magician from Isthmus, and Sadi is his maid. Uriah relates, revealing it's her first time leaving Zenobia, and explains she recently went on a blind date with a high-ranking official but rejected him. She's relieved by her decision, thinking she wouldn't have met Ike otherwise. The scene shifts to Zenobia, where Uriah introduces Ike and Sadi to her mother, Eltoria Octave, the leader of the Trade Federation. Eltoria thanks Ike for saving her daughter and asks if he's comfortable talking while she works. Ike agrees, and Uriah apologizes, explaining that her mother is very busy. Eltoria then offers Ike a reward for his help, but he declines. Ike reflects that Eltoria, as the chairperson of Zenobia's council and leader of the Trade Federation, earned her position through her own abilities. He considers himself fortunate to have saved her daughter. Eltoria notices his thoughtful expression and asks what he's thinking. She then tells Uriah to wait outside, wanting to discuss something privately with Ike. Once Uriah leaves, Eltoria gets to the point, asking Ike what the Demon Lord's army wants from her. Ike is surprised she figured out his true identity and asks how she knows. Eltoria reveals that she knows there is no magician named Reich in Isthmus, and her daughter and guards told her about Ike's impressive magical abilities. She deduced that a powerful magician using a false identity at such a critical time must be connected to the demon. Ike, realizing she has uncovered his secret, introduces himself truthfully as the Lord of Ivalius. Eltoria acknowledges the rumors she's heard about him and notes that he's a human in the demon army. She asks if this means he's now on the demon side. Ike explains that while his parents were human, he was raised as a demon by Romberg, the undying king. Eltoria then asks what he wants, and Ike explains that the demon army seeks to make a trade deal with Zenobia. Eltoria is taken aback, reminding him that demons have always been enemies of humans. She points out the risks of doing business with them, but Ike assures her that things have changed. He fights for a future where humans and demons can coexist peacefully. Eltoria, surprised by Ike's words, admits the current demon lord has a better reputation than his predecessors, but she remains cautious, unsure if the demons can be trusted long-term. Ike, unable to provide concrete proof, Eltoria then mentions the trouble the Trade Federation has with pirates, and Ike offers to eliminate Karasa, the notorious leader of the Redbeard pirates. Eltoria is intrigued, noting the pirates have been a significant problem, costing the city dearly. Realizing Ike's offer could solve a major issue, she considers his proposal but sets two conditions. He must defeat the pirates, and he must marry her daughter, Uriah. Ike is shocked by the second condition and reminds her of his connection to the demon army. Eltoria, however, sees his intelligence and sincerity as reasons to form a strong alliance, believing he will play a key role in the demon army's future. Their conversation is interrupted by a guard who reports that the Redbeard pirates are attacking the port. The pirates are raiding the city, taking goods, capturing women, and causing destruction. Eltoria, seeing the urgency, asks Ike if he accepts her condition. Rushes to the scene, where he helps a trapped guard and learns more about the pirate threat. He devises a plan to set a trap for the pirates. Meanwhile, Sadie, feeling out of place, decides to help in the kitchen. The cooks mistake her for Uriah, but she clarifies she is just a maid. Later, Uriah approaches Ike to discuss their potential marriage. Ike, trying to be considerate, offers to convince Eltoria to call off the arrangement, but Uriah confesses she truly wants to marry him, having fallen in love at first sight. Ike, surprised, tries to gently reason with her, but Uriah's emotions overwhelm her. As Uriah cries, Sati secretly observes, feeling a strange sensation in her chest. Ike notices Sati at the door but finds no one when he checks. Sati, feeling troubled, wanders into town, searching for something to please Ike. Unbeknownst to her, a pirate follows her. When she enters a dark alley, the pirate seizes her and knocks her out. Sadie wakes up surrounded by pirates but pretends to remain unconscious. The pirate who kidnapped her tells the others to move aside, declaring her a gift for their captain. Mistaking Sadie for Urian, the pirate gloats about his prize. Sadie, desperate, tries to escape. But when she steps outside, she realizes she's on a ship far out at sea, and despair overwhelms her. Karasa notices Sadie and realizes that she's the girl his subordinate captured. His subordinate confirms it, but Karasa soon realizes they caught the wrong person. However, he doesn't mind since he needed a maid anyway. Sadie, now in a tough situation, thinks about her master. While back in town, Ike learns she's been kidnapped. The soldier who was supposed to protect her apologizes, guessing pirates are behind it and noting that finding them at sea will be difficult. Determined, Ike decides to find her himself and asks Eltoria for a ship. She agrees, lending him the Vetne. We then see Ike sailing the seas, hoping to reach Sadie in time. He recalls their happy memories together and vows to save her no matter what. Meanwhile, on the pirate ship, Sadie is forced to wear an embarrassing outfit to please Karasa. She's uncomfortable and wonders why she must dress like this. Karasa explains that as a maid, she's supposed to do anything to please her master and insists she obey him. Sadie, remembering how Ike treated her when he made her his maid, promising to protect her, and valuing her consent, decides to find a way out of her current predicament and return to her master. She offers to cook for Karasa instead of being chained up, and he agrees. The scene shifts to the kitchen, where Sadie begins preparing vegetables. She eyes the guards watching her and surveys the kitchen for anything that could help her escape. Formulating a plan, she asks the guards if they have any alcohol, claiming it will make the food taste better. They bring her some, and she adds it to a pan while grilling meat. The alcohol causes the pan to flare up, and the guards rush to extinguish the fire before it spreads. Sadie accidentally spills alcohol on one of the guards, setting him on fire. While the other guard helps put out the flames, Sadie seizes the opportunity to slip out of the kitchen. The guards, after managing to control the fire, realize Sadie is gone and start searching for her. Meanwhile, Sadie sneaks through the ship, hiding from other pirates she encounters. The pirates, hearing the commotion in the kitchen, think it's just their comrades fighting over food and head there to check it out. Sadie finds a box filled with stolen goods and realizes she must inform her master. However, she remembers they're on a ship, and even with Ike's power, finding her would be difficult. Spotting a burning candle, she gets an idea. The scene cuts to Karasa admiring another embarrassing maid outfit, excited for Sadie to wear it. Just then, a subordinate rushes in, frantic, informing him that the ship is on fire. The entire ship is engulfed in flames, and we discover that Sadie is behind it. Hiding inside a barrel, Sadie hopes her master will notice the fire. The pirates, searching for her, vow to punish her for her defiance. She quietly waits in the barrel until things outside calm down. When she finally emerges, she finds the two guards from earlier in front of her. They boast about their keen sense of smell, which led them to her, and they kick the barrel to force her out. They demand she surrender, but Sadie has no intention of doing so. She grabs the barrel cap and knocks one of them out, much like Captain America. Sadie runs, confident that Ike will save her. But Karasa uses magic to immobilize one of her legs, stating he won't kill her but must punish her. He decides to take one of her legs as punishment, and one of the pirates moves to hack it off. Just in time, Ike arrives, blowing the pirate away. Karasa is surprised and asks who Ike is. Ike declares that he promised to protect Sadie and intends to keep that promise. He vows that none of the pirates will get away with this. Sadie runs to Ike, and Karasa orders his men to kill Ike. They attack, but Ike uses barrier magic to stop some of them and lightning magic to defeat the others. Ike then uses wind magic to blow the remaining pirates off the ship. Sadie, relieved, wonders if it's over. Ike asks if she's all right, and she assures him she is. He's glad to see she's unharmed, and she thanks him, despite feeling like she's just a replaceable slave. But Ike tells her that she's his maid, and he'll never abandon her. He mentions that he saw her signal from afar, proof of her faith in him. He praises her efforts, but their touching moment is cut short when Karasa, still on the ship, attacks with a water cannon. Ike blocks it with a barrier, and Karasa, impressed that Ike found the ship, claims that Sadie is now his. He attacks again with water magic, but Ike dodges and blocks the attack to protect Sadie. Karasa then flees into the ship, with Ike following, knowing they can't escape on a ship. Karasa launches another water cannon attack, which blasts them out of the ship. Karasa realizes he might have gone too far, but then he notices that Ike is still fine, hovering over the water with Sadie. Ike powers up a strong water spell, reminding Karasa that he won't let them get away with this. He unleashes the spell, Aqua Tempest, on Karasa. From a distance, the crew on the other ship sees the commotion and wonders what's happening. Suddenly, Karasa is thrown onto their ship, leaving them in shock. Moments later, Ike and Sadie join them, and Ike suggests they head back. Later, the ship returns to Trade City with the captured pirates. Ike tells Sadie that he managed to catch the pirates because of her. Her quick thinking not only helped him find the pirates but also recover the stolen goods. Sadie is pleased with his praise. The scene shifts to Altoria, who commends Ike for capturing the pirates alive. Ike explains that he doesn't like killing unless it's necessary, surprising Altoria, considering he's part of the Demon Lord's army. She suggests they finalize their trade deal now that he's met her conditions and asks him to keep the deal confidential to avoid trouble with the Alliance of Nations. Ike agrees, grateful that she's willing to trade with them. They proceed to discuss the details of the deal. The scene then shifts to a war-torn city in ruins, with the corpses of demons scattered around. Other demons are injured, including Saphiro, who is being healed by a subordinate. Their rations are running low, with only enough to last 3 days, and Fiorentina reports that they didn't find any supplies in the city they attacked. Realizing they've been tricked into attacking, Saphiro deduces that the Alliance army plans to starve them out. Despite her injuries, she's determined to go back into battle, even if it means dying, but Fiorentina advises against it. The story then moves to Zenobia, where Ike is dressed in a nice outfit. Sadie arrives in a beautiful dress and compliments Ike on his appearance, which he returns. Ike asks if she's well enough to be out of bed, and she assures him she's fine. She adds that she wouldn't miss the party being held in their honor and doesn't want to waste the lovely dress Altoria gave her. Just then, Yuria runs into Ike's arms, accusing him of planning to leave her behind. He gently tries to ease her off, but she doesn't take the hint until Sadie points out that people are staring. Yuria finally lets go, and Sadie straightens Ike's outfit before they head into the party hall. Inside, everyone eyes Ike, finding it hard to believe that this ordinary-looking man is the one Yuria has fallen for. Yuria tells him not to worry, saying she finds him handsome, and Ike thanks her. They go to meet Altoria, who tells Yuria she looks cute as usual and praises her for choosing Ike as her husband, claiming it shows her talent. Yuria replies that it's only natural since she's her daughter. Altoria then says she's leaving Yuria in Ike's care, shocking Ike. When he asks for an explanation, Altoria reveals that the treaty has been concluded, and now he must fulfill the remaining condition. It's announced that Ike and Yuria are to be married, leaving Ike wondering how he ended up engaged when he only came to sign a business deal. Altoria warns Ike that if he refuses, she'll cancel the trade deal. Ike protests that it's all too sudden, but before things can escalate, something crashes into the party hall, interrupting the proceedings. The mansion is suddenly surrounded by a strange white fog, and Ike sees the Demon Lord appear before him. She orders him to return with her immediately or Saphiro will die. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Saphiro is on the brink of death, struggling against the human army.